Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming back to watch the Entrepreneur Hour. Um, today's a tough episode. If you're watching it on the day of, there's been a lot of riots and stuff going on in all across America, actually, about police brutality and a lot of corporations and people are coming out and finally talking about the stuff that's happening. Like with Nike, for instance, as a brand, they backed Colin Kaepernick early on, and Colin Kaepernick was basically saying, "This is what's happening. We need to do something about it." And with a peaceful protest, and not a lot of corporations came out and were on his side about that. The NFL, including, and now the country's like at a boiling point and everyone is starting to jump in and make comments and make press releases. So I hope this really does move us along and starts to hold a lot of these policemen accountable. Me growing up in the South Bronx, police brutality was a thing we lived with. I even had a friend of mine, his father was killed by a cop in our building. So we saw it very early, and we just thought it was a way of life. And I'm not even black. Like, I know it's much more different for if you are a darker skin than I am. Like, I have a brother who's darker skinned than me, and he has lived a much different life when it comes to cop interactions. So, I just wanted to start the show out today by talking about that, and I posted something about how I believe the way out of this is through entrepreneurship. In a way, I think we have to give our young people the opportunity, the experience to be able to create their own economic engines, so they can reinvest in themselves and their communities. And then I believe this situation will change, because that's the only real way to change things. Paco, I'm on the show. I emailed you the link. Huh. All right, I'll send you another link. So I got a few guests today coming on. Let me make sure I sent him the right link. Um, so yeah, it's a crazy time, and I think we are in a boiling point of America, and I think as entrepreneurs, as you see a lot of these companies, they have to come out and make sure they are saying that they stand with this protest, because things are happening and you got to take a side. Um, so yeah, so I'll bring on my guest today, which is George. Um, hey George,
Hi, good morning. How you doing?
good. I'm good. How are you, man?
All right, very good, very good.
So I guess if you watch the show, I always start out by talking about how I met the person. So me and George, we met a long time ago in the same place. I met a few of the guests on the show in the Sunshine Suites in the Bronx, Hunts Point. George was one of the entrepreneurs there, and
Yep.
we got to know each other. And George was, kind of like our IT guy on the in the office. George, why don't you tell people about your background before you even started entrepreneurship? Like, what did you do?
Well, I've done a whole bunch of different things, and as a lot of people talk about, I've had a few pivots because I'm originally from the Bronx. I went to Cardinal Hayes High School, and I
Oh
went to
yeah,
Fordham University.
nice.
And when I went to Fordham, I was a biology major, and I was pre-med. And so then I started with that. Things Did not go as well as would have liked. When I finished Fordham, I had a C average. So, of course, that meant no U.S. medical school.
Oh.
So I tried going overseas. I had taken some Spanish. So I had taken some Spanish, not enough for daily use, as they say, but I had taken some Spanish. But I was able to go over Spain, went to a language program over there in summer after I graduated, and then I was able to get into medical school over there in October of 1980.
Oh wow! So you went to medical school in Spain?
Yes.
Where in Spain?
And Salamanca.
Oh, okay, nice.
Which is a very nice university town that was founded in the 13th century. So
Wow.
that was whole completely different change of venue and change of culture. We talk about things here, being, if they're 50 years old, we talk about them being old. Over there, one of the jokes in Salamanca, they had two cathedrals, an old cathedral and a new cathedral. And the new cathedral was from the 15th century.
Yes, it's
But
old and super old.
yes. But I was over there for medical school. Things did not work out as well as I would have liked. Because everything was rote memory, orals, and of course in Spanish. So, so in 1983, I went into this little store in the Plaza, looking to rent a word processor.
Nice.
In those days, there were machines, not a program. Well, it was a program, but it was a dedicated machine. They told me, "Oh, we got nothing to rent, but if you use that computer over in the corner, it'll look good that when the customers come in, there's somebody clacking away and, doing work on the computer." I said, "Okay." Did that for a couple of weeks. And then they said to me, the big boss wants to have a drink with you. I said, "Okay, that's good." Go down the block to the big office, and have a drink with the boss. He shows me the current issue of Byte magazine.
Byte?
Which in the 80s and 90s was a very big magazine, because, of course, before the internet, if you wanted computer information, of course, it had to be printed. So he shows me this current issue of Byte magazine, and he says, points to an ad and says, "I've got a customer that wants this. If I give you a credit card number, will you pick up the phone and order it for me from the US? I said, "Sure, no problem." Worked for them for 7 years.
Oh wow!
Because this was in the beginning of, computers. Apple was just getting started. This was the days of the Apple II and the Apple III. And the computer equipment, the software wasn't available in English. And the programming materials, I should say, the programs weren't available in Spanish yet. And the programming materials weren't available in Spanish yet. And there was no Spanish equivalence yet to Best Buy and some of the mail order houses over in Spain. So if you wanted software, you had to get everything international. So this particular little company needed a software buyer, a translator, and an English teacher.
Nice.
And so I ended up getting to that, and This was in 1983. So this, of course, was the year before the Macintosh showed up. So I was there from the beginning of when the Macintosh first showed up. And the interesting thing in the 80s, which is something that I've kept ever since, is that in the 80s, businesses didn't know brand names from a hole in one. You know,
Okay.
they didn't know XYZ. So this it was saying is that, okay, I've got this business, and my business has this particular problem. What have you got for your computer that will solve my problem? And then they went to the programmers and they said, okay, we can do this, 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 and this, and everything. But the important thing with that is, I learned how to, problem solve, with computers. And I've been doing the same thing ever since. In fact, I say sometimes that I've been asking the same series of questions for the past 35 years as to how does somebody help somebody figure out what's the best computer and what's the best software for them to get. The answer, of course, changes every month and every week because technology is always changing.
Sure, it makes sense.
But the questions that you ask to figure out what a person needs and to help the person develop their business, those questions are almost exactly the same for me as they were 35 years ago as they are now. Oh, Paco's coming.
Yes, I got Paco coming along.
Hello, Paco.
Paco, can you hear us?
So I learned how to, with these people over in Spain, I first learned how to figure out what a customer needs when it comes to their computer problems. So jump ahead to 1990. Spain is about to join the common market, and Apple Spain is now in existence. So everything that they needed me to do special for them is now available through normal channels from Apple Spain. So I head back to New York, move back home, back here to the Bronx, and I try looking around to see what I can find to use my Macintosh and my computer skills. And right away, I couldn't find anything. Ended up taking another job, but I did join the New York Macintosh Users Group. Again, that's another thing of the 80s and the 90s. Before we had the internet, everyone got together in user groups to figure out what was going on and what the latest stuff was. And that's important because in 95, this guy walks into our user group office and he says, I'm starting up an ISP, an internet service provider. You make me your official internet provider of the user group, and I will wire your office and I'll give you a dedicated data line. We said, sure. So this guy came in, put his stuff in, and he sees me doing troubleshooting of members on the telephone with their Macintosh and their computer problems. So he says, hey, why don't you come work for me? Is that I've got a small office in my house, and if I'm stuck in the office doing the phone all day, then I can't go out and sell. So I said, okay. So I started with him first part-time, then I went full-time, taking care of his phone calls and doing the sign-ups and the setups for his dial-up customers.
Wow. That's what year was that? 90? So that's AOL.
This is 96. We're
Oh,
up to 96. And this guy was very good. So his dial-up customers went from dozens to hundreds to thousands. And a lot of the people start saying, hey, I got this great ISP at home. Why don't we bring them into the office?
what was the name of the company? What was the name of his company?
The company was called Info House.
So he created his own internet connection?
Yeah. Well, no, he is that in the 80 yes, he set up his own, basically set up his own ISP in his own data center, and he had his own phone lines for dial-up.
And this was in the Bronx? Where was this?
No, this was in the Lower East Side on 4th Street.
Okay.
Yes, the first wired internet building in New York City was on 4th Street between A and B.
Wow.
So this guy started, as I said, these guys' customers started telling their businesses, hey, we got this great ISP at home. Why don't we bring him here into the office? So you can't do dial-up for business, even in those days. So they started getting data lines, T1s. And we got more T1s and more T1s and more T1s. So the boss says to me, you're going to learn how to install T1 routers. I said, okay, what's that? But he showed me how to do it, and I went out and did it, and that worked out very good. Then he said to me, okay, we got a lot of T1 routers. We're going to need a monitoring system so that we get the alarms on our pagers when there's a problem with Verizon or something else goes wrong. I said, okay, and you're going to be in charge of the network monitoring system. I said, okay. I played around with that a bit more. They liked what I was doing and get bigger and bigger. Then I said, okay, you can't work out of my house anymore. We're going to build a real data center.
So he had the data center in his house?
Yeah. Well, he had in his little one-bedroom apartment on 4th Street, he had not even racks, cabinets and cabinets and cabinets of T1 routers, and the big router was over there, and the little router was over there, and that was there. Wow. And yes, so I went to his house for months to take care of all this stuff. So then he said, okay, we're going to build a real office down by Battery Park. We're going to hire somebody to be your boss. The boss had known him for years. He was a great engineer, but he was a royal pain in the you-know-what. But, he said, you want the person that's running your data center and running your network to be a micromanaging pain in the you-know-what. That's going to take care of all the details. Okay. So, your job is to help this guy and to learn from him and try and keep him happy. You will not succeed because you cannot make him happy. He's never happy, but you can try. So this guy comes in. We go down to our brand new office on 11 Broadway, right off Battery Park. And he proceeds to show me and a couple of other people that we've been hired how to wire data cables, how to set up, how to make connections, how to build racks like you see on TV. And we built our own little data center. And the main computers that were running this were all Cisco's. That's high-end network iron, which everything was command line. I said, So he said to me, okay, you're going to learn how to use all this stuff.
Nice.
I said, okay. So, little by little, I learned what I could look into, what I could touch and everything. And then after about 6 months, I come in one day, and all of a sudden, instead of logging into the computer router, the big router, and instead of having read access only, all of a sudden I had write access.
So as a non-technical person, that basically means he could code the thing. Before, he could just see what it was doing and, have access to see. That's read access. You can only read the code. Then you have write access, means you can write code. So that's a big difference. So
right. So speeding things up. So as I said, in 1996, I was hired by this company to be their first employee. Jump ahead 3 years to 1999, the end of 1999, and I am a second level engineer on their network, and I have 3 first level engineers reporting to me. And what was one person, we're now 20 people. And we get okay. Now, the end of 1999, some of you may remember, or you were little, but that was the height of the tech boom. So our little company called InfoHouse gets sold.
Oh, wow.
To a phone company called Network Plus.
Wow. So you're involved in a acquisition.
I was involved in an acquisition, yes. And
did it do well for you or no?
Yes, actually it did. I did not. There was never any discussion about, I had a salary, up until this point, but there was never any discussion of anything else. But the big boss always said that he never paid us as much as he wanted to. So, but of course, we never talked of percentages or anything anything like that. But at the end of 1999, we all got our Christmas bonuses, and the big boss said, hey, this is all of your envelopes, Christmas envelopes, are special. They are from the sale. And don't discuss what you got because everybody got different. But I did pretty good. But speeding up, we get sold at the end of 1999 to this big phone company called Network Plus, and we all get brought along, and we all get raises, and we all get much more responsibility and much more customers to worry about.
Sure.
So 1999, and then I kept getting thrown into all sorts of different things, all sorts of different problems, and trying to figure them out as best I could, and teaching people how to take problems apart as best I could, and taking care of the customers. A lot of times directly taking care of the customers, and then sometimes just taking care of the infrastructure so that takes care of the customers. So 1999 was great. 2000 was great. 2001 started off great. Then, of course, we all know what happened. September 11th, 2001, the World Trade Center is destroyed. The company I was working for, Network Plus, had their sales office in the World Trade Center.
Whoa! Did people pass away from the company?
Fortunately, everybody got out
Amazing.
from the company. I had actually been there for a couple of meetings, a couple of months before. So I had actually been up to their offices in the World Trade Center, and they were gone.
Wow.
So now that, of course, was the beginning of what, of course, we all as the bubble bursting. We had been building all this time through 99, 2000, and beginning of 2001, and Network Plus offices were on 26th Street between 11th and 12th. It's one of those great big buildings. You can actually drive it. They have truck elevators in. You can actually drive a truck up into the elevator, bring equipment in. We had a data center the size of a football field.
Wow. Wow.
And it was full of a whole bunch of companies' servers. And all of these companies had a .com at the end of their name, which means some investor had given them money. But of course, most of them didn't have real business plans. They just had somebody that giving them money. So all of those companies, so towards the end of 2001, all of those companies disappeared. So all of our customers disappeared. So network. So I was laid off in the end of 2001, and the company was bankrupt the first week of 2002.
Wow.
Even though they had a data infrastructure that stretched all the way up and down the East Coast.
So that was a booming time for that industry, even how early it was. And for it to be knocked out that quick, that's interesting. And right now we're seeing very similar things, right? Like,
unfortunately we are, because when you have everything, including Network Plus, was all investor based, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So when all your investors pull out,
there's no cash flow to run the business. Yeah.
There's no cash flow, and you're screwed. So I had, so I was laid off. So I started. That's when I had to, of course, start entrepreneuring, and that is when.
What was your first crack at it? What was the first thing you thought of when you lost the job? 2000s. I mean, I was in the same boat, but I was young. I was just out of school. I was working by the World Trade Center. I actually got my first ever bank account in the World Trade Center, in Citibank on the basement. So I still have checks that have the World Trade Center address on that. I'm saving that. So I remember that time was rough, and it took a few years for everybody to bounce back. And I also became an entrepreneur. I started talking to different people about making websites. What did you do? What did you do during that time?
Well, I had it was a bit of a slow process, but of course I joined what was then the brand new Apple Consultants Network.
Okay.
And I started working on my first certification for the brand new OS 10.
Okay.
So I got that, and I also had a chance to sit down and study, because, as I said, I have been working with Cisco stuff for the past 4 years, but I learned it all, seat of my pants, getting thrown into it. So I never had any of the theory, never had a chance to study any of the theory to go with all the stuff that, the technical stuff I had picked up. So I needed to sit down, study the theory, so I could go get my CCNA, my Cisco Certified Network Associate.
Sure.
And I did that. And then I incorporated GRP Computer Consulting and started doing Macintosh support and doing networking support and wiring offices. And things, went along slowly but surely for a while. And then I was working with some people to get so go ahead to 2005. And I was working with some people that were helping me reorganize my business. And I was telling this somewhat story to the people, the same story to the people there. And the woman there said to me, "Hey, that sounds just like what my fiance does." So I said, "Oh, good. I'd like to meet him." So we got together. Turns out her fiance was working for a company that was just setting up. This is 2005 now. It was just getting established in Dumbo, Brooklyn. And they were specializing in international long distance.
Okay.
And they sold phone cards, and they also sold, they sold phone cards, and they had multi-language experts, and they did thousands and thousands of hours of phone minutes to Asia every night. But they were also in this converted warehouse in Dumbo, which wasn't developed anywhere near what it is now. It was all a whole warehouse area. But the landlords that owned the property were trying to develop it and convert it back into office space. And so the different companies coming into this area would try to get Verizon to come in to get them to set up a DSL, which was the big thing in 2005. But DSL, in most cases, ran on copper in the streets. And the copper in the streets in Dumbo was put in by Mr. Bell himself under all those cobblestones. So if you have 100-year-old copper, you cannot handle DSL and 100-year-old copper, because DSL was very dependent on what your distance was to the central office and what the quality of the cable was between you and the central office. So there was hardly any infrastructure to handle office for data for office. So the landlord says to this company that was called Empire One Telecom, and they said to me, "Hey, you got a data trunk coming in here. Can you provide a phone and internet service to the other people in the building?" So they said, "Sure." So they put in a riser, peeled off a DS3 from their fiber trunk, and started setting up patch panels and making connections to the people in the rest of the building. And this is about the time I came in, and they hired me because I knew how to wire, I knew how to build data centers, I knew Macintosh, which a lot of these people did, and I knew some Cisco, which is also what their Big Iron was running. So I did great with them. I again took care of their network monitoring system, so that we can get the alarms when things messed up. And that woke me up many a time in the middle of the night. And So, and we started doing more and more of that stuff, and then we expanded to some other buildings.
So you were doing that as a consultant or as an employee? And what are you doing now? What do you do now in this crazy economy and tough times? Like, of course, remote work for people like us is easier, but what are you doing now as an entrepreneur? How are you bouncing back from this?
Well, things. Okay, so yeah, no. To answer your first question, I first started out as a consultant for this company, and they said then after about 2 months, they said, "You want to go full time?" And I said, "Yeah." So I started getting more responsibility. I got a couple of assistants, and everything was great until 2009,
Yeah, another one.
which you were a bit older, so you remember that better.
Yeah.
Was the height of the recession, and I got laid off again. So I went back to being a GRP computer consulting, and again doing my Mac work. And it was, of course, right around that time that I hear about this uh, big co-location place that's uh, opening up in the Bronx, or is going to be opening up next year. And I was actually trying to get involved early because I knew if you're setting up a co-location place, hey, it's got to be wired. You got to take care of the network. So I was originally trying to get involved with the team that was going to be building that place.
Sure.
And I was not able to get in, but then of course I did join once things get settled. And that's when we met. That's when we got started, and we've been trying to work together ever since. But yes, getting up to now, things have been relatively slow lately, with everything going on. But I've been trying to connect up with salespeople or marketing people, or get partners that can either help me develop my company as it is, or if I found another slot to go back into, working for somebody else and take care of their data center, then I would not mind doing that either. But yeah, the important thing, of course, with as an entrepreneur, and of course with all the businesses being developed, is that, as you well know, technology is always changing so quickly. And if your business is developing something else, you don't have the time to keep up on the technology. So you need people like me or people like you, to help them, to guide them through on the technology and what's available, and what you can get off the shelf, and what has to be developed, and those kind of things. So I'm always looking for, still always looking for new people to help out and to develop, and to make sure they get their technology right from the beginning, because it's a hell of a lot easier to think ahead a little bit and plan for this and plan for backups and plan for security and everything like that, than to have to start all over again and when a problem occurs and things get messed up. You want to find your problems in the planning and not in the action.
Sure. So I'm gonna bring in Paco here. Paco, meet George. George,
Hello,
meet
Paco.
Paco.
George Petriccione.
Very good.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Paco is one of my mentors and business partners. George has been a network solutions kind of guy, a Mac guy. He's he wired up and maintained data centers for many years. So right now we're just going over his career and what he did to bounce back from economy drops like now. And I guess I know you're just jumping in, Paco, but maybe there's a way to have you guys meet each other live here, and you guys can each tell each other what you do and see where we can take the conversation.
I'm delighted to be able to finally figure out how to get in. My desktop was not working well, and I was kind of laughing because I said, I got Petriccione on the other side, I got Miguel Sanchez on the other side, and this 81-year-old here struggling with 2 phones, 2 laptops. My laptop was saying, your browser doesn't support da 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 da. You got to download. I said, holy shit, man! I've only had like 3 hours sleep. I was in the hospital. My stepson had a scooter accident last night. Yesterday afternoon, my wife and I were in the hospital. He's fine. He didn't have any head injury or anything else. So he's cool. So everything is good in that part. But trying to get in was a little difficult. I've tried to stay up with technology at this young age, and that hasn't been difficult because from early on in my business, I invested in at one point I invested $250,000 in a hard drive for my company that was being issued by something that Miguel probably doesn't know because he was probably not even born. It was called Wang Computers out of Boston.
Yes, yes. I remember them.
Yeah. So, my whole take on a lot of these things is after you finish with the technology, after you finish with the content, after you finish with all of that, can there be a space for the spiritual being of people that you're working with? We're living to a place in time where spirituality and not religiosity necessarily. If you are a Catholic or a Buddhist like I am, that's fine. But beyond the religious aspects of it, what can we add to the offerings that we make? And I believe that what's going on today and yesterday in the last 3 days, 4 days, pretty much accentuates that we have to reinvent. George, you, when I came in, you were talking about how technology is changing, not in a linear way, but in an exponential way.
Yes.
Coronavirus was an exponential virus. One person can end up infecting like 1,000 something. People still don't have their arms around that. Even some of us who are involved in this thing still end up thinking linearly about a lot of issues and a lot of problems. Sometimes we got to check and say, am I thinking of this correctly? No, I'm thinking the way that I've been trained to think and my perspective. So to me, the whole issue of people finding more meaning as to what they do has to be added to this, what seems to be like cut and dry technology. Like you help people with their laptops and their desktops and Apple computers and the hard drives and I guess that kind of thing. You probably do more than that, but that's where I am today. Perhaps because I'm so tired. I said it's more and more important that people really, really connect. Like with you, George, I would love to know who George is, other than what you do. I would like you to know who I am, other than what I do. Because we're all into doing, and we all have long careers. I suspect that you probably are in your late 20s, George.
Like me.
like, Anyway, I could go on and on, but I won't. Old people tend to babble. I don't want to babble too much, but that's where I am today anyway.
Yep.
So yeah, so maybe George, tell him what you do. Like if you were meeting him, there's a networking event, right? Introduce yourself.
Yeah. Well, like I was saying, the important thing is for me is, and part of the reasons why I've stayed in the Apple ecosystem the entire time is that I think the good thing about Apples is that I set them up and then I can get out of the way. Apples are, and the rest of the Apple infrastructure are not really designed for people, that want to tinker and play with the stuff, anything like that. They want to get their work done.
Yeah.
So that is, what I do basically is figure out what tool, depending on what problems different people have, what are the best tools available to allow them to do whatever they're passionate about. It doesn't matter what my interest in or what my biases there are, is that my job is to empower the customers' businesses to be able to do what they want to do. And I say sometimes that, once I get to the point where you tell me what your problem is or what you're trying to solve, then I know how to help you. But the hardest part for me for the past 35 years has been finding people or connecting to people that have problems that I can solve.
Sure.
So, yeah, that's why, as I was saying before, is that, I always ask a bunch of questions about what the various clients' needs are and what they're trying to accomplish, what they want to do. And as I was saying before, those questions are very similar to the ones I was asking 35 years ago. The answers change every month or every week because the technology changes. But the way you want to plan out the technology infrastructure for our business so that it can do what the person wants to do, what they're passionate about, at the same time continue to have the proper security and the proper backups and the proper infrastructure so that they're protected to be able to do exactly what they want to do.
So we got about 10 minutes left. What is a way for someone to find you, George? Right, I have the LinkedIn in the bio and the description. But where should people find you if they need help with their computer, their Mac, their data center, whatever that is? Paco wants. Wait, go ahead.
Yeah. Before you do that, George, I want to suggest to you a language consideration for you, which I've learned. I always used to say that because of my knowledge or my wisdom or whatever it is, I'm going to empower George to be able to do this and this. And then I came to the realization that if I'm empowering George, the power is coming from me. And I hear you saying basically that you're trying to find people with their passion and you're trying to find out how to get them to be able to have a realization of that. So the language suggestion that I want you to consider, you might not want to, but that's fine, is that you are a setter of conditions. So you set the conditions so that the power comes from them, not from you. But you set the conditions, you set the parameters, you show them how you solve problems, and then they empower themselves. So the power is never really coming from you. So it's a bit of a nuance in language, but I find it important. I tell people I'm a farmer. I tell people I prepare the ground, I feed the ground. My tomatoes have all the power that they need inside of them. I don't have to empower my tomato, but I set the conditions so that then I get a crop. So a little nuance, but sometimes it's important.
Okay, good.
So how can people find you, George?
Well, like you said, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or again, you can go to my website, grpcomputerconsulting. Yeah, right. Very good. grpcomputerconsulting.com. And I've as I said, I'm in the southern end of Yonkers right now, but I'm right near all the Bronx subways and everything. So when people are traveling again, I go all over the city. But of course, I do have, some remote software, whether it's something like this or whether it's FaceTime or any of the others. So there's a lot I can do remotely while things are going on, and certainly can help people with a lot of things that they want to consider. But like I said, I was definitely looking for also for partners and other people to work with to allow me to concentrate on the technical side of things and have somebody else that can help work on with the rest of the other business things.
So like you need people to help with marketing, sales, while you do the infrastructure, like actual work. You want to find partners that could maybe partner with you to do those other pieces while you handle the actual nitty-gritty of the business, right?
Yes. Or if there are existing companies, of course, larger companies, say, 30 to 50 employees or something like that that are not happy with the way their computer system goes, then I would certainly be willing to take a look at these things, and obviously, on a contract basis. And of course, if things work out, then I would certainly be willing to join any companies that are in need of.
Where in Yonkers are you, George? I mean, I was on the Greyston Foundation board for 18 years ago. Greyston is in Warburton, Ashford and Warburton, all the way down by the river. The Greyston Foundation, the Greyston Bakery.
I am all the way on the other side. I am right by the southeast corner of Yonkers, right by Bronx River Road.
By the racetrack a little bit?
Lower. Right by the Bronx, literally right by the Bronx border. It's a half a block away.
Okay, I got it.
So I guess, Paco, any last words from you guys? We're coming up on the end. Anything you want to say or questions?
No, I'm just glad to have met George, even for a brief moment. I got people in like the Greyston Foundation that probably could use his services. Greyston does about $15 million of they bake brownies, Ben and Jerry's, and they've been there for over 30 years. You probably have heard of them, you know. So yeah, glad to have Becky.
I was enjoying their brownies just the other day.
Okay.
No fool. So yeah, I guess George, any final words for the audience? Anybody watching that you want them to know, to think about? I definitely have your site up to reach out to you. Any last words?
That's pretty much it. Just want to remind everybody. Oh yes, one thing I tell all of my customers and clients. Hopefully, a lot of them listen to it. But one of the most important things you want to worry about is backup. You know, we're talking about people that have their entire business lives and their personal lives on their computers. And if they only have one copy of stuff, then they are asking for big trouble. You want to have at least 3 copies of everything important. And it should be in multiple types of equipment, because if you have a backup but you lose, one of your backup machines to reload the backup, then you're just as just as messed up. So everybody needs to think about backups. Everybody needs to think about security. And if you're worried about those kind of things, but you have no idea what to do, then yes, get in touch with me.
Good. Sounds good. All right, guys. So thank you guys for coming on the show. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Safe. And thanks for anybody watching. Come back tomorrow. We have another guest. So check out GRP Computer Consulting if you have any questions. And thank you for coming. Thank you, Paco. Thank you, George.
Thank you.